for this Father's Day, I'm going to get a little practical because of a conversation I had with someone yesterday. And a story that I happened to come across. You know, the synchronicity of the two was pretty amazing. But someone said to me, she comes to the soul a lot. She loves to meditate. She's into learning things spiritual and changing herself and all that sort of thing. And she said to me, you know, I really wish my husband would come to the soul. And I find myself in a little bit of a nippy attitude because he's not on the same path as I am and that sort of thing. And I said, oh, really? First, red flag. Not even a pink flag, a red flag. And I said to her, so how do you treat him when he says he doesn't want to come to the soul? And she said, well, I know better. But I get into it, you know, I just like, oh. You know, and then her mind goes, she said her mind goes to that place, which is, well, if he was more spiritual, it would be our marriage would be better. If he was more spiritual, I'd be happier. I'd be more fulfilled, you know, to that sort of thing. So I said, oh, okay, let's talk, honey. Right? And I said, well, why don't you try? She said, he said something to her like, I bet you don't behave this way at the soul. And I said, right? This was rich. And I said, why don't you tell him he's right? And then why don't you say, I'm really sorry. I don't know why I expect so much of you or to you to be different. But I'm really making the effort to be more kind and more understanding and accept you who you are. You're so, you know, and she was saying how kind he is to her. But he isn't the be-all, end-all because she's not way to herself. She hasn't learned self-mastery. She can't accept who she is in these moments where she's tested, so she just throws it on him because that's what we do. It's much easier to you know, write on the mirror than it is to take in the reflection. I know it's easier to cover the mirror. So it has to do a little bit the end of the conversation, she went, aha. You know, it's just a matter of being more honest with him and not allowing, we talked about that inner child that comes up. Do you ever have your inner child come up? Somebody says something to you and you're like, and you feel like you were when you're a kid. You know, and you know better. The yogic part of yourself knows that really this doesn't make sense. But the wounded child inside of you is still fighting to be right, because if she's right, maybe she'd be more loved or more accepted. You know, it always has to do with love. It always has to do with healing. But now, you know, in these new energies, let's just be a little bit more honest about it and say, you're right. I need to make some shifts. Will you be patient with me while I'm shifting? And I even suggested to her, why don't you ask him to hold you when your inner child is acting up? It's like, don't talk to me. So, you know, I don't need your the fatherliness. Just hold me, right? And she said, oh, that would be nice. And then together you can mend your inner child. So synchronicity, right after that, I was reading a story of a man who was raised by a Methodist preacher. His father was a preacher. So he did wonderful things with them, like took them camping and spent special time with them. But what he didn't like was the only time the family came together was at dinner time. And at dinner time, his father would give them a dissertation on politics. And no one was allowed to give their opinion. And when they did, the father was just shut him right down because he was an orator, right? And so he found himself, just similar to the woman yesterday, he found himself taking the contrary point, just because he wanted his father to be wrong and he couldn't accept it because he was just so overbearing. So the guy went to China for a couple of years. And this was a very introspective, very aware man. So as he was in China, he was thinking about the time that he was going to come back and all his friends and family that he really loved and he really missed. But he realized there was one person he really wasn't looking forward to seeing again, and that was his dad. So in his awareness, he said, then I vow, if my father, now see how courageous you could be about this, right? I thought it was really gutsy. He said, since my father's the only one that I can't feel friends with, I vow to live with my father.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Well said. I vow to live with my father until he and I can be friends. Because these were two adult males now, right? So he wasn't going to get back into the father-son thing, but till he and I'm going to live with my father until he and I could be friends. So he called his father from China and said, can I live with you for a little while? And gave us his attention. He said, I want us, if you're willing, I want to work on our friendship. And his father said, I would love that. I want to be friends with you too. So he went home and he lived with his father. And he said the honeymoon lasted about 2 months. Then the next thing you knew, his father was doing the same thing. His father was being his father, not giving any space for the son to have his personality, to have his thoughts, to have his opinions, no respect at all. So what did his inner child start doing? Started coming up and, he doesn't respect me and he doesn't know who I am, and right? But he went back to his awareness and he said, I'm going to stick with this. And he stuck with it and he just dealt with the negativity that came up. He dealt with his inner child by saying, I realize there's something inside of me that has to shift. And it took time. But he started saying his father would do his dissertation on politics or whatever. And he got to the point in his wisdom where he would say to his dad, I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. Now, for a while, that inner child was still, I hear you, but I wish you'd shut up.
Yeah.
Right? For a while, but he stuck with it. And so when he got to that point where he was 100% sincere and he meant, I hear you, Dad. And he realized that he didn't have an opinion. He didn't have to be right. He didn't have to prove himself to his father. He was enough. He was completely fulfilled with the fact that he knew how he felt. And he was feeling good about how he felt. But he didn't care if his father knew or not. And he didn't care if his father respected him. So when one time he said, I hear you, Dad. And he really did, without thinking of a response in his head. He heard his father, and his father stopped and looked at him. And he said, well, what do you think? First time in his life, his father ever asked him what he thought about something. And it was the beginning of the friendship.
Wow.
The beginning of the friendship. The father did nothing. The son did all of the inner work and stuck with it until that pain stopped, until the understanding could come. And it came, and now, they're both still alive, and they have a wonderful friendship. So whatever we have with our father, whoever they are, we're meant. That, I bet you, that son realized that father was a tremendous teacher. Without him, the dad being the way he was, the son would have never healed or raised his vibration enough to accept everyone for who they are and not feel bad about himself because he wasn't being heard or respected. It's huge in our evolutionary travels, huge. And the other thing that I want to say about human fathers is I reflect, my father's been gone for about 3 years now. And what I want to tell you human fathers from my experience, first of all, dads, if you have daughters, they think you're God. Realize that. Girls, don't we love our daddies? Didn't we love our dad? From the sun rises in the sky of your father's eyes. Right? So just be aware of that. They may not act that way, especially like around 11 to about 21. But what you say and how you feel, remember, daddies, you teach your daughters how lovable they are. And if you have a hard time giving hugs, and if you have a hard time saying I love you, do it with your eyes. Be there for them. Hug them. It's really important. And of course, fathers, you teach your son how to be men. You teach your sons how to be men. And that's so important too. It is like being God, and that's why We were always taught in Yogananda's tradition to honor mother, all women as aspects of mother and all men as aspects of the Divine Father. You have such a huge responsibility. But having said that, my own father was, everybody in the family, he was the central son in our family. Not because he was perfect. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be very honest with you, my father had some real demons. He had some real addiction issues. Anywhere, good Irishman, loved his alcohol and his cigarettes, loved to bet on the horses. And, these are things that he struggled with his whole life. But I'll tell you what, we loved him. We loved him unconditionally. He was wise, he was funny, he was the first one to pick up the phone and say, "You haven't called me. What are you doing?" And he was the center. Because of his joy, he realized, he just made his mind up. He said, life is a party, and it's up to you whether or not you have a good time. And that, I heard that when I was a child, and it stuck with me. In other words, I'm responsible for my own happiness. And he was a Leo. He tried to make everybody happy and was very comfortable in the center of attention. So dads, what I'm trying to say to you, and even to this day, if we as a family, we're looking at pictures, Pop comes up and we're all, "I miss you, Pop." We don't think about his addictions. We don't think about his struggles. We think about who he was, the vibration he held, the love he held, and we knew he would do anything for us. Anything. So dads, don't worry if you're not perfect. Your family loves you anyway. Show up and know that you're loved. We love you for dads. We love you for who you are. We love you for your hearts. We love the way, men, that you reflect the Divine Father. Thank you for your protection. Thank you for being there. And I'm speaking to all men, even the ones that didn't have physical children, because you're responsible for holding that energy as well. And we feel protected by you, men, when you have a pure heart. And you rise to that occasion. My father and I are one. And I, as a male, am responsible for holding the power, the light, and the protective vibration of Source to all God's children, including the animal kingdom. So men, I love you all, and I really thank you and honor you today.
See, that's your heart speaking. Because really, Trish said, "Oh, I'm going to be practical today." I was awesomely practical. And then metaphysically, which, is a little more kind of in that woo-woo-ville.
You going there for me today?
I'm going there
I'm
for
usually
you
the one
today.
who goes there.
We're both. We're both. We're masculine and feminine. So, and it's so beautiful when that blend is perfect and purified and tuned in with our divine side, because then the masculine is that wisdom, that pure wisdom, that spirit wisdom, right? But also with the biggest hearts imaginable. And that heart is that deep, pure feeling that is pure intuition, is dialed into truth, that is all-knowing, and it too is all-powerful. So, wow, we have both sides going on always. And when it gets askew, when the wisdom goes askew, we get very linear in our minds, don't we? And sometimes we kind of just get a little limited in our ideas about things, because that pure wisdom that's dialed into the infinite is not tapping into the infinite. It's relying on its own resources, and so we start to get a warped view of things, or limited view of things. And when the pure feeling or that intuition of the heart goes askew, when we're not, doing things to cultivate the heart, or being still enough to listen in the heart, to listen, then what we have is over-dramatization, right? We have the emotions ruling the court. So you can imagine how difficult it is to live with ourselves. when maybe you got a linear mind going on along with the drama, and wow, and that's you. And then everything that you see on the outside, and of course our upbringing, our human parents, everything you think happened from them in. when all it has always ever been is a teacher for you to look within yourself, to develop yourself, to align yourself with the divine so that both your heart and both your mind can be in perfect harmony, be the soul team, right? A wise consciousness and a loving heart. How sweet is that? There's the healing of the world right there. And it really starts one person at a time. And you know, Trish said in her first, when she's talking about the husband who was dealing with the wife kind of not sending positive energy because he didn't want to come to the yoga or whatever, and that they come to maybe a possibility that he just needed to be held. You just hold me. Why don't we go into a soul hug instead of the words? And you know what? That is like probably one of the best practices that you and I can put into, on the practical side, put into practice today. And metaphysically, what does that mean? So you have these transcendent aspects of our higher self that are part of the divine, right? And the very practical of the dual aspect of being human and being in a world of change. And all we really all need is to know truly, madly, and deeply that the Heavenly Father and the Cosmic Mother and all those cosmic forces really, really love us as we are. Which they do, truly, madly, and deeply, and forever and forever. And the Father aspect, you know, it's so transcendent because it is the Father of creation. So it's in cahoots with infinite Spirit, and Spirit said, you know what, I have an idea. Let's create a show. Let's create the greatest show on earth, as a matter of fact. Let's create. But Spirit is like infinite, still beyond your conception bliss. So it stays as bliss. And it had an idea of creation. So then it delegated out to the Father. A father, so to speak. A director, a creator, a Lord creator. Still not the end, but creator of anything finite. This whole universe has a creator. And it's the same creator of you and me. That's the Father that we were singing to this morning. Success and joy, success and joy. My Father and I are one. Really, whatever you have is mine. It's mine. Belongs to you, belongs to me. My Father and I are one. But when you consider that part of you that is like so transcendent of the nagging thoughts that you have and the kind of roller coaster feelings that you have, and then the combination of how you're trying to get along with yourself. Good luck. Good luck as a human race, right? Good luck just to deal with yourself. Then you get into a marriage or a partnership. Now you're dealing with two consciousnesses that are out of control. Good luck. One of you is making a stand these days, and it will entrain the other one, if you're patient enough, to go to that higher self for the hug. I know that sounds weird, you know. Yogananda said it's an infinite space dweller. So he said, hug the infinite space dweller. In the Bhagavad Gita, he was talking about one of the verses, and he talks about Source is an invisible, infinite space dweller, dwells in space and beyond. He says, give the space dweller a hug. I thought, okay, let's be practical. Let's stand in front of Whole Foods, out in front, and like you're hugging a tree, but you just stand there like this. And people go, okay, what are you doing? And you say, I'm hugging the invisible space dweller. They'll go, okay, I'll see you later. But honestly, right now, here, everything is the presence, you know. Even in our mixed up, crazy world, even in our mixed up, crazy days, even at the worst, when we're at our very worst, divine love is at its very best. And you know, the thinking mind wants to always talk about it and to always ask questions about it and then talk to your best friends about it and on because the thinking mind is keeping you from doing something about it. Whereas really, we need to maybe stop thinking so much. So I really want you to stop and think about that. Stop thinking like a mortal and start being hugged as an immortal in this presence, this loving presence that's within you and me. It's just an inward thing. That's what the Father is asking all of us to do. Now he says, have you played along enough in my creation? What are your learnings? What are you learning? Not just in this life, but in all your learning. You're a sum total now of all your learnings, of all your lifetimes. It'd be easy to kind of look at each other and say, really? When you're not your best, you're going to say to that person, this is the best of your learnings in all of your lifetimes, and you're behaving like this. And then you direct your fingers in towards yourself. It's been a long haul, and we are so conditioned to think linear and to react to the drama. Can I just read you a quote from the teachings of Yogananda? That, it talks about this transcendent aspect of your divine masculine that is saying this to you and giving you full permission to be yourself, your true self with a capital S. And it was here. Where did it go? Here we go. According to spiritual law, the devotee who holds on to the after effects of meditation, so this is assuming that we have a little meditation so we can go within and get the hug and release all of our stuff. Let it just give it back to God. Give the big headache back to God. Give the heartache back to God. Give this thought back to God, because that's where it all comes from, plus which you're not the thoughts and you're not the feelings, you're infinite spirit. So meditation is just taking the burden off of you and just giving it back. You'd be surprised at what happens when we give back ourselves, everything about ourselves. Don't think there's something you need to hold on to yourself. You don't. You're happier when you give it all back. So, according to spiritual law, the devotee holds on to the after effects of meditation and who maintains against any trial. Against any trial. It's like, this is the most ridiculous thing you're ever going to hear. So against anything that can happen to you, anything, his inward peace and joy in this life, that you maintain your inner peace and joy no matter what, and you will pass after death to the eternal blissful peace of the Heavenly Father. Keep your cool when everyone's losing there. How the heck can we do that until you and I learn to stay in that divine hug? You have an argument, why don't you make a pact with your loved one at home? Let's hug. Soul hug. And we can't leave the soul hug until we've somehow gotten blessed to transcend this squabble, this linear talking that we're doing, or this emotional outburst that we might be having, or a little combination of both. And yeah, own it. Own it that it's not her or him, it's your stuff. It's not never anything out there. Not ever a person. It's not ever a condition out there that is to blame, folks. You're the flawless mirror. When your mind goes askew and the heart goes askew, that mirror is all smoggy and foggy and dirty. The Heavenly Father is so still. And Eckhart Tolle has told us so much now in his Power of Now and the New Earth and those beautiful books that he came down and even on Oprah gave to the world, to the mainstream, the teaching. He said only in the inner stillness, can you really get the right direction. Can you really receive the GPS, God's perfect system? What is the mission possible message for today, right now? Not yesterday, not what you think that you learned yesterday, but right now. Brand new situation, isn't it? Your feelings are a little different. Their mind is a little different. There's new possibilities today. Everything is brand new, spanking clean right here and now. By being still, we get dialed into the Father. And when we get still in love, in the hug, we get dialed into the Mother aspect of ourselves. Wow, love and stillness, they're the most beautiful, beautiful qualities of you and me. That in that stillness, there's where you feel the embrace. There's where you truly know that you are, like Tricia told all you fathers today, I love you, just please honor yourself, love yourself as you are, just as you are, because that's how spirit is right now, and that's how your divine nature is right now. I'll tell you a little story of my dad. We didn't have a real spiritual relationship, and him being like Trisha's dad, you know, like I am. I've just got my stuff, he's got his stuff, we all got our stuff, right? But I knew he loved me at my core. I knew, and I was blessed because I knew he was always there for me. So men, and ladies too, that aspect of the divine masculine in you, and men, that aspect that is more dominant in us, if we allow it to cultivate the divine wisdom, man, do we love to make sure that our family is safe. Boy, do we love to make sure that they're taken care of. We will do anything behind the scenes to make sure that that whole family situation is really, really going to be happy in this lifetime. Isn't that a true part of all of our natures, really? That's the part of the wisdom in you. And I knew that about my dad, and though I feared him, because he was an attorney, and I tried to lie early on, and I never got close to being successful at that, because I'd get cross-examined. So I couldn't do that, so I had a little fear going on, because he kind of had a domination kind of energy too. Hello, who doesn't? So I remember, it's the year they burned the bank down in Isla Vista, and the year, and back to that, right? Back to the early 70, that was 1970, and so me and my friend, Beard, VW bus, hey, let's go up to Big Sur and go camping. Oh, let's get out of here. So we got our girlfriends, got in the VW bus, and I knew somebody brought some stuff. I mean, how can you be in a VW bus in 1970 with a guy with a beard and long hair, and the bank burning in Isla Vista and all that unrest, and not have stuff in your bus? So anyway, so we're driving up, you know, the highway.
That stuff actually came in a VW bus. I think it came.
Yeah, I
when you
know it
bought
came. It's part of
it.
it. We could sue the Volkswagen people,
You know,
right?
they started it.
So someone pulled out some stuff while we were driving up there. We were to San Luis Obispo, and the stuff was in like a cube. It was hashish, to be honest with you. It was hashish. And I was
Nobody here knows what you're talking about.
I don't. Anyway, we're driving along. We're not quite really clear, but we were driving along. And then, and I think, and I look in the rear view mirror, and there are those red light, blinking red lights, like right there, and I'm going, oh man. We weren't speeding.
Per se.
We weren't speeding.
No.
It's okay, so we get pulled over. Yanked out of the car, and grabbed the stuff, whatever we could grab, and I put a big block of it in my pocket. Because I didn't get frisked first. I got thrown into the car, the police car in the back. While then they frisked the VW bus.
Of course, because it was the one holding it.
It was a true guilty one.
Possessor.
The bus.
Yeah.
All right, so what I proceeded to do, because I figured I don't want to be stuck with this stuff, I took a big bite. Now, if anybody's this is some practical advice, because if you get stuck and you got some hash in your pocket, don't bite it and try to chew it. Swallow it down in one big gulp, because the stuff is like, oh my mouth, I couldn't eat it. It got stuck. I just like, and I still had half of it to go down, and I couldn't get the first half down. And I'm just hoping that the police take their time in frisking the bus, because I had a lot of work to do trying to finish that ounce of hash. I finished it.
All 135 pounds of them. Can you imagine what state he was in?
I finished it. Then I didn't care what the hell was going to happen. It really didn't matter at that point. All I knew is that, he started to drive me somewhere. The other people were in the other car, so I didn't even know where they were, right? So, I don't know, another practical advice, don't get caught in San Luis Obispo. Do not get stuck in that town.
Small
Man,
town.
they thought we were the troublemakers that burned the bank down. They thought we were like, the communists that came down from Berkeley. Oh, man. And being treated like that was like new to me, being raised in North Hollywood and kind of just, in a protective environment. Anyway, so they threw us in jail, and that was my first experience of being in jail, and there were some crusty individuals there that night. But again, it didn't matter to me. All I needed was a little rest.
Maybe some
Everything
food.
would be okay, right? So I wake up in the morning.
Ice cream.
I wake up in the morning and still just really cloudy, because that's a lot of stuff to put in your system, right? A lot. That's a lot. And then I found out I had a phone call. I get a phone call. And then I realized, uh-oh. Can you imagine a good old attorney who didn't even want me to grow my hair when I went to college because I needed to keep it cut really Ivy League, and I was going to call him. And say, this is my freshman year, I think. Dad, I'm in jail. And I've been busted, drugs, And I did. Of course I did. And he was way cool. He says, okay, where are you? San Luis Obispo. Okay, fine, great. We'll see what we can do. Boom. Well, I knew, because he was well connected as an attorney, I just trusted my dad get me out of any situation. Not that I put myself in situations like this all the time, at all. Next thing I knew, about 3 hours later, the people were treating us a lot better. And the next thing I knew, we were being released. All right? So that's when we didn't get a lecture from my dad, all of us, but we were just said, hey, you guys better do some good thinking, because this trial is going to be brutal. This trial is going to be brutal. So he scared the bejeebies out of me about the trial, right? Because you've been busted, you were holding, da-da-da-da. Well, the trial date came, so we were worried for a couple months till the trial date. We went up there, sat in the courtroom, ready to be called up for the first thing to do before you even sit in the trial. And we sat there, and we sat there, and we sat there, and the guy was calling up case after case after case, and he said, okay, that's it, everyone's dismissed. I'm going, what? They make a mistake? Hey, we were supposed to show, this was our court date. This was our court date. And he said, I have no record of it. So I know to this day who was behind the scenes pulling the strings to get me out of that little bit of trouble. So I guess the moral of the story that I'm sharing with you is that someone big time is behind the scenes right now. I mean, Father, you'd do anything to help your kids. Anything. There is a conscious living force right now that is pulling the strings to help you become happier in this existence, to help you get in touch with yourself so you can be a magnet to draw unlimited abundance, unlimited happiness, unlimited wisdom, and unlimited strength into your being. So I want to close with another quote from Yogananda. And if I were to say I could only read one thought from Yogananda and all the teachings, and I devoured them for over 40-something years, and I still do, this would be the thought that I want to leave you with as masters of yourself, as heavenly fathers in the flesh, as divine mothers in the flesh, in becoming. Yes, you are. You are nothing else. Please don't accept your limitations. Please get the big hug when you feel really down and out. When you had an argument, it was just like, oh, that same stuff again. Go to the hug. Go to the big hug. Feel how much God loves you, doesn't see your flaws, doesn't see your limitations, made you to perfection, guys. To perfection, that's all the universe sees you as. Absolutely divinely perfect. And that is such a power, that force in you and the force that created it. Listen to this. If you think of God in deepest meditation, if you love Him with all your heart and feel completely at peace in His presence. That's where you and I can transcend those trials and what just happened and those horrible things that can happen in life. That if we go to God in deepest meditation and we just love Him, we just love Him for the pure sake of loving, the one that doesn't get any higher, right? The one who owns everything, who is the greatest lover. We just love Him with all our heart and feel at peace in that. Without watching or wishing for anything else, the divine magnetism of God will shoot out of your heart. Wow. Think of this, guys. You just sit down and do your best to think of the one who loves you the most and created you the most without wishing for anything else. A divine magnetism. See, we're in the electrical age, or Para Yuga, but the next age, the Treta Yuga, is the magnetic age. Right now we're dealing with electricities. We're dealing with energies. But as we evolve as a humanity, we're going to deal with magnetism. So we're talking about the magnetic age in your heart. A divine magnetism will shoot out of your heart and will attract unto you everything you ever dreamed about and much more. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to talk to people. You don't have to do any more workshops. The only thing you have to do is come to the soul of yoga. But other than that, the magnetism is going to bring it all to you. If you love God for His own self, not because of what He can give you. So if you have direct access and you demand as a child of God, first ask for His presence. Ask for the consciousness. Then ask for the things. Don't ask for things and forget about asking for that union and that oneness and that soul power, right? So you love God for His own self, not because of what He can give you. And if you are completely attracted by that divine love and His divine magnetism, that power from Him, again, Yogananda says, goes out of your heart and mind, and by your slightest little wish, you will attract unto yourself the fulfillment of that desire. And finally, if you have unconditional love for God, He drops thoughts in others' brains, and they become instruments to fulfill even your unspoken desires. That's your dad. It's not what you know. It's who you know.